We now get to COSO. COSO ERM. There's some key points in looking at COSO, and you'll remember that we spoke about COSO earlier as the international standard for enterprise risk management. What are those key points? Firstly, ERM begins with a strategy. Secondly, ERM is a process, and that process is affected by people, not systems, but by people. Thirdly, ERM covers the whole organization. Risk represents uncertain events, and these uncertain events can threaten the company's success. Important to remember, risks do not need to be completely mitigated. It's impossible to actually eliminate all risk. An element always has to remain. But a structured and disciplined approach is necessary. Remember, ERM can only provide a reasonable assurance. Now, COSO ERM, what we're going to look at in this section is applying COSO's Enterprise Risk Mgt Integrated Framework. What are today's organizations really concerned with? The key burning issues are risk management, governance, control, and assurance, and with that assurance goes an element of consulting. If we're looking at a definition of ERM, what I've got up on the screen now is the COSO Enterprise Risk Mgt Integrated Framework definition, published in 2004 by COSO. It still stands. And let's read through it slowly and understand exactly what they are talking about. ERM is a process. It's affected by an entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel. It's applied in setting the strategy across the enterprise. It's designed to identify potential events that may affect the entity. It's also designed to manage the risks to be within the entity's risk appetite. And the purpose of this is to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of the objectives of the entity or the business. Why ERM is important? Well, there are two underlying principles here. One, every business, whether it's for profit or not, exists to realize value for its stakeholders. Whether this in the form of profits or other benefits, that is the purpose of any organization. Now, value, as we can see on the slide, value is created by informed and inspired management decisions. And these decisions cover all spheres of an entity's activities, from setting the strategy to operations. Entities that fail to recognize the risks they face, either from external or internal sources, and to manage them effectively, can destroy value in absolute or relative terms. And that value, who does it affect? Well, the shareholders and other stakeholders, including the wider community and society at large. you just think of the problems that BP had in the Gulf with that massive oil spill a couple of years ago, and the damage that that did to the various communities and to the society and to the environment, to see how important the management of risk is. Now, remember that for companies, shareholders realize value when they recognize value creation and benefit from share value growth. For government entities, value is realized when constituents recognize receipt of valued services at an acceptable cost. To continue, ERM supports value creation by enabling management to deal effectively with potential future events that create uncertainty and respond in a manner that reduces the likelihood of downside outcomes and increases the upside. Downside, negative outcomes. Upside, positive outcomes. Enterprise Risk Management, or ERM as we're calling it, facilitates management's ability to deal effectively with potential future events that create uncertainty. It also provides the mechanisms to respond in a manner that reduces the likelihood of negative outcomes and increases the chance of positive outcomes. It enhances the ability to communicate value creation and preservation programs and goals, and it communicates with stakeholders and delivers, as planned, the results to them with as few surprises as possible. This COSO ERM framework actually sets out the key, the essential components. It suggests a common language for all of this, and it provides a clear, focused direction and a set of guidelines for ERM. So now, what is the ERM framework? Well, here we have it. Here is this famous multicolored cube, which many of you may have seen before. What's it all about? Well, entity objectives can be seen on the basis of 4 different approaches: the strategic, the operations, the reporting, and the compliance aspects. ERM looks at activities at all levels. The enterprise level, the division, and here we're looking at the enterprise level, the division or subsidiary level, and the business unit process. We can add another one in as the subsidiary, which you see in this column here. The ERM framework requires a business to take a total portfolio view of risk. Management then considers how these risks interrelate to one another, and management develops a portfolio view, total view, from 2 perspectives: the business unit level and the entity level. Going back to our framework cube again, the 8 components of the framework are interrelated. Now let's look at each of these as we go along. The entity's internal environment is the foundation for all components of enterprise risk management. It provides a disciplined structure. It influences how the strategy and objectives are established. and how the business activities should be structured, and how the risks are identified, assessed, and acted upon. That is what we're looking at here. Now, we start with the first issue, the internal environment. The block on the right-hand side shows that the internal environment covers the tone of the organization, sets the basis for how risk is viewed and addressed by an entity's people, including risk management. It's the risk management philosophy, its risk appetite, integrity, and ethical values, and the environment in which it operates. In short, it looks at the internal environment, and it sets out the philosophy regarding risk management, establishes the risk culture of the entity, considers all other aspects of how the organizations may affect its risk culture. Within the context of the established mission or vision of a business, management establishes management has established certain strategic objectives. It selects the strategy and establishes related objectives, and these cascade through the enterprise and are aligned and linked to the strategy. Objectives must exist before management can identify events that can potentially affect that environment. So on the objective side, objectives must exist before management can identify the potential events. ERM ensures that management has in place a process to set objectives, and that those objectives support and align with the entity's mission and are consistent with its risk appetite. To summarize, objective setting is applied when management considers risk strategies in the setting of objectives. It forms the risk appetite of the entity, which is a high-level view of how much risk management and the board of the company are willing to accept. Risk tolerance is the term that is used to describe the acceptable level of variation around objectives, and this is aligned closely to risk appetite. We now get to our event identification. Internal and external events affecting achievement of an entity's objectives are identified. Risks are distinguished from opportunities. Opportunities are channeled back to the management strategy or objective setting process. To summarize, you need to differentiate risk and opportunities. Events that may have a positive impact represent natural offsets or opportunities, which the management channels back to the strategy session. Event identification involves identifying those incidents that happen internally or sometimes externally that could affect strategy and the achievement of objectives, and addresses how the internal and external factors combined and interact to influence the risk profile. So, to summarize what we're talking about here, management recognizes that uncertainties exist, and it cannot know with certainty whether or when an event will occur, or what its outcome should be or could be if it happens. As part of event identification, management considers external and internal factors that affect event occurrence. Now, risk assessment, and this is the level that we're looking at now. Risk assessment allows an entity to consider how potential events might affect the achievement of objectives. Management assesses events from two perspectives: the likelihood and the impact. Remember, we spoke about this earlier. What is the chance of an event happening, and how serious could its impact be if it does happen? So looking at this area, risks are analyzed looking at likelihood and impact as the basis for determining how they should be managed. Risks are assessed on an inherent and a residual basis. To summarize this, risk assessment allows a business to understand the extent to which potential events might impact its objectives. It looks at the risks from two separate aspects, likelihood and impact. It's used to assess risks and is normally also used to measure the related objectives. Employs a combination of both qualitative and quantitative risk assessment methodologies. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between qualitative and quantitative as we progress through the course. The assessment relates to time horizons or objective horizons and assesses risk on both an inherent and a residual basis. We now look at the risk response, which is the layer that has just been highlighted. Management chooses a response to a risk. Spoken about this already. Does it avoid it? Does it accept it? Does it reduce the risk, or does it share the risk? And in doing it, management develops a set of actions to align risks with the entity's risk tolerance and risk appetite. So risk response is identifying and evaluating the possible response to risk, evaluating options in relation to the business risk appetite, cost as opposed to benefit of potential risk response, and the degree to which a response will reduce impact and or the likelihood. And then chooses and executes response based on the evaluation of the portfolio of risks and responses. To put it another way, and to emphasize it even more strongly, because these components are critically important to everything that goes through the COSO ERM framework, and it cannot be stressed enough. Management identifies risk response options. How are we going to deal with the risk if it happens? It considers the effect of those options and in the event, the likelihood of the incident, the impact that the incident will have, and it does this on the basis in relation to risk tolerances and costs versus benefits. So there's a trade-off, and designs and implements the response options. The consideration of risk responses and selecting and implementing a risk response are integral to ERM. Remember, avoid, reduce, share, accept. Those basically are the options that one has. Avoid, reduce, share, accept. The control activities are the next issue to be discussed. Policies and procedures are established and implemented to help ensure the risk response and to make sure that they are carried out effectively. Policies and procedures that help and ensure that the risk responses as well as other entity directives are carried out. Control activities are the policies and procedures that are in place to see that they happen correctly, that they occur throughout the organization at all levels and in all functions. Control activities occur everywhere in all the operations of the business and include application and general information technology controls. Control activities are part of the process by which an enterprise strives to achieve its business objectives. They usually involve two elements: a policy establishing what should be done, and the second element, the procedures to carry out that policy. Information and communication. The pertinent information from internal and external sources must be identified. It must be captured and communicated in a form and time frame that allows personnel to carry out their responsibilities. Effective communication also occurs in a broader sense, flowing down, across, and up the entity. So, to repeat in a more formal sense, relative information is identified, captured, and communicated in some sort of form and time frame that allows people to carry out their responsibilities. Effective communication also occurs in a broader sense, flowing down, across, and up the entity, which management identifies, captures, and communicates all the information. We've already said the rest of it. Communication must occur in its broadest sense across the whole organization. Now, enterprise risk management has to be monitored. It's a process that assesses both the presence and the functioning of its different components and the quality of their performance over a period of time. Monitoring can be done in two ways: through ongoing activities or through separate evaluations. So the entirety of ERM is monitored. Modifications are made as necessary. Monitoring is accomplished through ongoing management activities, separate evaluations, or both. Monitoring, again, the effectiveness of is monitored through ongoing monitoring, separate evaluations, combination of the two. Now, it should be noted that ERM is not a serial process or a set of processes that occur one after the other, or when a component affects only the next. It is multi-directional, it is interactive, it's a process in which almost any component can and does influence the other. Now, monitoring helps determine the effectiveness of the processes, the technology being used, the personnel who are involved executing the ERM process. The entity establishes minimum standards for each component of the enterprise's risk management. The performance against these standards can then be monitored objectively. Monitoring can be done in two ways, as we said, ongoing activities or separate evaluations. Enterprise risk management mechanisms usually are structured to monitor themselves on an ongoing basis, at least to some degree. ongoing monitoring is built into normal recurring operational activities of an entity. Ongoing monitoring is performed on a real-time basis and reacts dynamically to changing conditions and is ingrained in the entity. As a result, is more effective than separate evaluations. The greater the degree and effectiveness of ongoing monitoring, the lesser is the need for separate evaluations. The frequency of separate evaluations is a matter of management's judgment. In making that determination, consideration must be given to the nature and degree of changes occurring from both internal and external events and their linked or associated risks, the competence and the experience of the personnel implementing the risk response and the related controls, and the results of the ongoing monitoring. Now, finally, some words about the combination of the two. Usually, some combination is used, and it makes sure that the enterprise risk management process maintains its effectiveness over time. Deficiencies in an entity's risk enterprise or ERM structure or management may surface from many sources, including the entity's ongoing monitoring procedures or its separate evaluations and internal parties. All enterprise risk management deficiencies that affect the entity's ability to develop and implement its strategy or to achieve its established objectives must be reported to those who can take the necessary action to handle it.